Hey, welcome to the show. First off, please introduce yourself and tell us which office you're running for.
Sure. Hi, my name is Brian Pierson, and I'm running for Senate District 18, which encompasses parts of Beaverton, Aloha, a little bit of Hillsborough, and then south to Farm Country. And this is my focus is to run as a senator and use kind of my life's experiences to see what I can do to help improve our state.
Can you tell me what you do professionally?
Yeah, sure. I've been, I've had a long and interesting career. Of all things, started as a West Point graduate and spent a decade in the military, serving around the world in Germany, was deployed to the Gulf War, and had also an opportunity to get my master's and go back to West Point as a professor. And of all things, I'll date myself. My master's thesis was integrating computers into the classroom. From there, went to Applied Materials, one of the largest semiconductor capital equipment manufacturers for, again, over a decade, starting in frontline project management, working my way all the way up to being the head of manufacturing, as well as the operating officer for a $2 billion service division. That actually led me to Oregon about some 20 plus years ago. Was recruited to go to a company called FEI that do scanning and transmission electron microscopes based in Hillsborough. And I was asked to be the head of operations and research and development. And these are the microscopes that image like the AIDS virus and other health and chemical properties to help develop science. And I had the privilege of being able to lead that organization. From there, went to my first chief operating officer role was with HireRight. And what HireRight does, it does the background screening for pre-employment, and had, again, the privilege of screening over 11 million people a year to help them get jobs in different companies and work through that process. After that, back to Oregon to Ericsson and Evergreen Aviation as the general manager of their government business, helped the company stave off bankruptcy, saved a bunch of jobs, and actually created a bunch of jobs down in Medford, Oregon, in the aviation industry. And then from there, had an opportunity to work with private equity, meaning investing in different businesses and helping grow businesses. And then had an opportunity to be the chief operating officer of the Jacuzzi Corporation. So if you needed a hot tub around the world, I was your guy. And so again, from that, was able to open a business or I was able to open a division here. If you've seen the ads on TV, get your bath remodeled in one day. Brought about 100 jobs into Portland to help do exactly that. And that was as a result of me being, from Oregon, and that was the first place I looked to expand. And most recently, again, back to some private equity, some business, and helping and coaching both entrepreneurs and senior executives to try to help navigate the challenges of business. And then ultimately, just a few months back, said, I've been blessed with this really different and amazing career. And I've always tried to serve the country or the state or help people, and just felt compelled to maybe try it one more time and run to be our state senator. I hope that's not too long, but it's been a long life.
Do you have any government service background?
Yeah, absolutely. In the not in the traditional sense, but yeah, serving from West Point and then serving as an Army officer in the Corps of Engineers, got to do a lot of host nation build assistance and rebuild. And years ago, for our friends up in Washington, the Nisqually River Bridge was effectively washed out. And one of the first things I did was to help rebuild and connect the Nisqually tribe back, was got to build and design a 120-foot temporary bridge over the Nisqually River, which was really my first time of getting into, serving the community, and just to see, the relief and happiness on people's faces of what we were able to do, created that motivation for me to, let's see what I can continue to do throughout my career in the different businesses, whether it was, semiconductor to, enable the information age and have the cell phones we all have, or to be able to look at something like in HireRight enabling to keep the world safe and make sure the bus drivers that take our kids to school were effectively background screened. And so I've always tried to guide my career to have positions and opportunities that would make a difference in some way and be able to serve, again, the community.
Can you tell me a little bit more about your biography? I know you said you had some life experiences you think you would like to contribute, outside of business and government service, for example.
Oh, for me, I can say I've traveled the world. I have been in six of the seven continents, 164 countries, and have gotten to see the best and the worst of humanity as a result of it. As my time in Ericsson, spent time in South Sudan and Central African Republic, of seeing, the ravages of both war and terrorism. And that's woven into kind of my fabric of seeing the best of us and some of the worst of us. And so in my experiences, that's what's, created this tapestry and desire to say, we can do better. And somehow, some way, by getting people to talk and taking down some of the barriers is what my focus has been, is the most effective companies, countries, people, is when you can get people to talk. And more importantly, when you get people to listen. And that's why I'm running, because I've just found that as really a kind of a more central Republican, that we've lost the art of listening and respecting each other. And that's what the I guess the next part of my biography kicks in, is going, how can I bring this life of experience, rather than sit back in a home in Beaverton and retire, but how can I somehow be able to reach across the aisle, understand and use some of the techniques that I've learned over the years to be able to get to intelligent compromises, to ensure that we can take the best of our, progressive ideas with some solid conservative fiscal values and bringing them together, and not look at right or left. I mean, that's the part I can say that is my background that frustrates me the most, is when we put labels, or, are you Republican? Are you Democrat? I'm an American first, and I'm always going to do the best I understand and we understand for the people by just having these types of conversations.
Now, can you tell me more about Senate District 18 and what makes your community special?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for 18 is our diversity. We have both the farm country and we're the home of Intel. So we have, the largest employer in Oregon is in Washington County in this district. And we have the great, agrarian farmer base that made Oregon strong and had created the opportunity for the further expansion. So that would, in 18, what makes us, we're that microcosm of Oregon. We have the high-tech jobs, we have the opportunities, the potential for economic growth, and at the same time, we have the absolutely well-established, agriculture and farm base that makes us strong. And making sure we protect both sides. And it's then again, should not be both sides. It's we need each other. That's the theme of my campaign. We need the microchips, we need the processors, but we need food, we need the support from our agriculture. So it's a unique balance in 18, that is different than many of the other districts in the state. That where you're either more of a pure farm area or you're a city. We have kind of both. And we also have a vibrant community that is multicultural, that has come together. And we do need both sides to work together to craft what the future of not just District 18, but of Oregon, as we begin to figure out how to make this cooperation.
As you talk to constituents in Senate District 18, what are they telling you that they want the next senator for this district to focus on?
All crime all the time. I don't want to be trite, but I hear it over and over again. Crime, lawlessness, homelessness has become a very strong concern on a number of levels, which may be surprising. Of course, the people that are directly affected by a physical act of crime are the most directly impacted, and we must absolutely address supporting our public safety officials to be able to enforce our laws. And that's something I've heard over and over again, and it gets heightened by our homeless challenge. I'll come back to the homeless challenge in a second, But what it also affects when we have a reputation outside the state of being, not again with a crime problem. If I was to go, and I have gone to different, businesses, boards of directors to convince people to invest in Oregon, it's a shame, but I kind of get a little laugh or haven't you seen the TV? And don't you see what went on in Portland? Or do you see what you guys are trying to do, with some of your measures? You're not exactly a business friendly state because we're kind of scared to go there. So we have the direct effect of what some of our decisions and policies and legislation have had to create kind of this state of uncertainty where our friends and neighbors are not feeling safe to go to the supermarket. And we have the overlay where to be able to bring businesses and drive some economic growth, there's some real concern that Oregon is not a safe place. I've heard that up and down from both sides. And a carrier from this is our homelessness, I'm going to say chronic homelessness. And too often, I really appreciate everything that the Democrat Party has been doing to protect our vulnerable. It's got to be priority for a great society to take care of those who have become caught up in this chronic chain of homelessness. But at the same time, I am really focusing on we have many, many people in government. I will continue to support that, of meaning support the vulnerable. I'm taking a look at the top of the funnel. How do we break the chain of chronic homelessness? How can we continue to create so many people that are affected negatively? And it breaks to me down in three areas: the economically homeless, the medically or the chemically dependent homeless, and of course the mentally ill. And if we were to break those down in percentages, the economically homeless and the mentally ill account for a smaller percentage than most would think. And we need to address that very directly. So let's talk about those areas, and anyone that's impacted, it's huge to them. So I don't want to in any way feel like it's a minimization, but it's in these sectors. The economically homeless are generally, it's about affordable housing. And my approach is how do we make housing affordable? Is to ensure you have an economy that has better paying jobs, better paying opportunities, better salaries, so you have the ability to afford housing, while as a legislature ensuring we use our zoning authority, our incentives for builders to make sure that when we develop parts of our state and county, we have the full spectrum of housing being developed. So everything from transitional housing to those that are, really truly down on their luck, to low income apartments, moderately yet next level apartments, townhomes, single family homes, and ensure that we now can live the American dream and generate generational wealth by being able to move through the levels of housing as your abilities can do it. But the better paying job allows you to make some of those decisions. So I am focusing on saying, let's make sure we use our zoning well, incentivize the builders to ensure we have the right demographic of housing in a community, and then as importantly, that we've got the businesses, the capability, incentivizing our small business, taking some burden off of that, bringing the larger corporations in, that we get a balance, just like I described. The 18 needs a balance of that to be able to break the economic side. The mental health is what we need to continue to develop with having the beds, having the facilities, having the counselors for those that are chronically mentally ill. And unfortunately, that also comes with some tough love, where someone who is certified as really with a mental issue, we will have to take some action to help them. And it's that balance between free will and for the good and safety of society. The middle section, or our addiction or our drug issue, is something that, too often we focus on the person on the homeless person on the street. My personal focus is on let's get the drugs at their source. So we all talk about a fentanyl crisis. By some of the decisions that we've made open borders in the South, et cetera, have made fentanyl easier for it to come across the border. Well, in Oregon, we don't control the southern border of the US, but what we can do is we need to do everything we can to work with federal, local, and all levels of law enforcement to go after the distributors, go after the dealers, go after the network that brings the fentanyl and the other illegal drugs into the state. When you control that source of supply, it's much easier to help an addict when it's not easier to feed the addiction. So cut the supply and in parallel, continue things like in Washington County, CAT, meaning the treatment centers, the availability for someone to become clean, to then work on their skill set, to get them back in, to go back into society. That's kind of the challenges I see. I know, and my apologies to anyone listening. It's a long answer, but it's a hard problem. And it takes a multivariate approach. And that's why I'm running, because I see too many of our career politicians, they understand a sector of society, whether that's in community development or housing. One of my things I've been blessed with, again, being able to have is this career of being able to see multiple businesses, companies, and being responsible for all different functions, and then needing to look at each of those functions to make the priorities, the trade-offs to get to a solution. Because if these problems were easy, all of our government officials would be solving them. They're really hard. They're complex, and they take some experience to be able to do it. And that's one of the reasons I stepped out and said, it's not that I'm going to be the czar of homelessness, but I believe because of my experiences, I can potentially make it not just a dent in it, but look at it a way differently to say, how do you break the chain? How do you slow it down? And ultimately, how does it not become such a major part of society that has, made us a less safe place and a more concerning place to really be able to develop the state that we wanted.
Who is your favorite Oregon historical figure?
So this one is going to be a little different than I'm a West Point grad. So I challenge everyone, if you're listening, to look up C.E.S. Wood. And C.E.S. Wood was West Point grad, came to Oregon, and he settled here in the 1880s. And ultimately, you would think a West Point guy, military. Actually, he launched the Portland Art Museum and did a bunch of reforms and social issues and started the beginnings of kind of the culture of who Portland became today. And if I can, a quote, his Oregon Encyclopedia biography is soldier, lawyer, poet, painter, raconteur, bon vivant, politician, free spirit, Renaissance, and a Renaissance man. If that doesn't describe who Oregonians aspire to be, I don't know what is. And so for me, that if there was somebody to look at and go, hey, that's kind of an interesting role model, and if I could live up to half of those, that's one heck of a life. And secondarily, for the engineer in me, got to say Linus Pauling, with the Nobel Prize. But C.S. Wood is the guy I look at and go, yeah, I tried to do that myself.
I think that's probably the most unique answer I've had to that question. So love it. Got to look that guy up a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that I like history. And, to quote Napoleon for a second, those who do not study history are damned to repeat it. And I do my best to figure out, who's what. And, I grew up in Tampa, Florida. And when I came out here, my first assignment in the military was to Fort Lewis. And I'm like, I have found the Northwest. I have found home. And when I was able to get back here some 20 plus years ago, it aligns. I'm an engineer. I am a soldier. I've done those things, but hopefully a little. I'm working on my raconteur and bon vivant, but hey, there's still time.
Love it. All righty. What are the primary sources of your personal values?
The easiest answer, of course, is our parents, but the harder answer for me is I I did have the ability to go to West Point. And the easy values of the academy, duty, honor, country, which many people hear, but it's things every day with the cooperate and graduate, learn how to listen, get the input from your troops. Don't make rash decisions. Take the harder right rather than the easier wrong. Those can just become words to many, but when you need to live and breathe in that environment and look soldiers in the face and get them to do potentially what is the most heinous thing to any human, which is potentially taking a human's life, that really shaped who I am and how I look and make decisions. Because I tend to really look it through the other person's eyes as a result of the orders or direction or legislation in this case that I'm to have the privilege to author. How's it going to impact them? How are they going to feel about it? How are they going to internalize this? It's not just the mechanical side, but what my values are very much more on the emotional side. I'm a little bit of the different, and as an engineer, operations guy, you would expect West Point grad, that militaristic, approach. That's not how really we're trained. It's much more understand our people, understand what their motivations are. And that's what West Point shaped my value chain, being the ability to, command soldiers around the world and then use that in the private sector for the last 30 years has shaped a different value chain with different things I've learned of how to approach people and how to listen and when do you make the decision? How much time do you take? What are people looking for in a leader and when? What's appropriate? And so I've been able to shape a bunch of different values from that experience and then with a lot of learnings of what types of things do people not need to hear to make a decision, but need to understand to make better decisions. And one of the hallmarks for me in leadership is it's about what people do when the boss, the leader is not there. That's the true test. Because then it says, we have a belief in our system, our values, our leaders. And that's one of the things to take a little advantage of this answer. Values are also about, something that seems to have been lost in our politicians of late. And it's a motivation, not that I'm some icon of values or whatever, and many of my friends would question that in different ways, but it's about respect. Can we bring some respect back into our government officials so people look at it and go, hey, that's kind of cool. That's my senator, and that's my congressman, or that's my governor. That people go, wow, they've got the best interest of the people in mind. They're willing to make compromises and make decisions that will affect the majority of Oregonians and know that some decisions are going to be unpopular and making sure that those voices are heard and validated. Not every decision we take is a popular one, but the decisions we do take that are against your personal wills, I have the responsibility to make sure your voice has been heard. Because if you can be assured that I heard you and we've made a decision based on best possible information, maybe we'll get a better result because we can respect each other. And your voice is in the back of my mind to make sure that if something starts going a different direction, and to be very specific, we took a very open response to, the legalization of drugs in the state. And, we made the decision, and the voice in the back of my head from some of the other side of the aisle would be, did we go too far? So as we look at, like our homelessness crisis here, that voice starts to play. Did we go too far? And that's the value chain that we start developing of going, okay, we can be creative, open-minded, and progressive, but we have to have the willingness to look at our own decisions. And, maybe we need to pull that back a little. That's something that takes courage. And that's the values that, I got out of West Point is that every order we give isn't perfect. We look at it and go, could have done better on that one. What could we have done? What could we change? And do we need to have the courage to change? And so that when it comes to values, they're created over your life, but I can tell you where the base formation, it was a result of what I learned and had the privilege to learn from.
Are there any criticisms you anticipate your opponent leveling against you, and do you have any responses to potential criticisms?
At this point, because it's a state election, this type of we really don't even interact. And so no, I'm glad not. And I've made a conscious effort on my own part that this is a choice about philosophy, not about the person of what they can and can't do. So no, I haven't heard any. I've been privileged not to hear any, and I can say personally I've leveled none. So I just don't believe in it. I think that's the worst part of American politics is the divisions that we or the derision that can be put at each other politically. And in the one instant I interacted with my opponent, we realized we agreed on 90% of the areas that her focus was on, and the things we not solely didn't agree on were just different areas that I'm bringing to the table to help maybe take us to the next level or improve some of the things that we've had to continue to invest on. It's not that I want to put homeless shelters out of business, but I guess I do. I'd like us to have not as much of a need. And so that's kind of if anything we differ, it's like I think there's too much of a focus on only focusing on the result of our decisions of the problem. And I feel there's not enough focus on not having a need for the support. So no, we haven't done anything directly to each other. If I say it's probably our focus on the problem is that I would say her focus is primarily on the results of the issue and making sure people are cared for. And I'm saying, yeah, we need to do that. And let's break the chain so we don't have a continuing need. So we can redirect, things from more and more potential homeless shelters to improving our education system, to improving our transportation infrastructure. So we get the funds that we're privileged to have through our tax base distributed so we can improve the state for more as opposed to we're having to focus today.
Now it's time for my world famous lightning round. First off, ducks or beavers?
Sorry, Army football guy, have to go with Army West Point. But I ran Erickson air crane, and those cranes were very orange, but I think it was appropriate. They had green stripes down the orange. So I'll give you a political answer. It's like, I will say I support based upon where I sit. So if I'm with Oregon grads, call me a duck. If I'm with some of my family members here, they are absolutely OSU. So I'm going to be the Erickson air crane. We'll be orange with a green stripe.
All righty. Favorite landmark in Senate District 18?
Okay, this one I'm going to give you a duality. So you'll see that in that I love the sequoias in Hillsborough. If you've ever been to the Hillsborough Civic Center, there's a group of trees that are immense, and to me that's the iconic image. It's on our license plates. It's the definition of the natural beauty of Oregon. And here's the duality answer, which we've been talking about through this. It's Intel D1X. We've got this massive, highest tech semiconductor manufacturing facility in the world. That was my job. I supported and did this type of industry for damn near 20 years of my life. And to see that facility in little old Oregon says that it's the future technologically of not just the state, but the country. If we're able to get the CHIPS Act, that we get one of the tech centers, Oregon will become Silicon Forest. We call it Silicon Forest today. When I first got here, I always joked and said, it's Silicon Forest, not many trees. we're about to get a whole bunch more trees and really be able to plant a forest. And to establish that, it's going to be not just for, these years, but for many years in the future, that this section of Oregon will have that high-tech capability. And so you see got to make sure we maintain our conservation and ecological heritage. I'm proud with my wife. You can check, I guess, waste management. We don't have regular garbage service because we try to live within 1 square foot a month of generated garbage by being ecologically sound, recycling. I don't mind sharing. I even fly my plastics because I travel some for business to California where I can recycle them. It's a core value for me which may be different for the party that I represent, the reputation thereof. I am focused on ensuring that we have that balance of technology and the conservative values of conservation to make sure that we don't, and we'll get into that in my conclusion of following a balance of that high tech, potentially polluting activity with the green state that we all know and love.
All righty. Next up, what is your favorite restaurant in Senate District 18?
Favorite restaurant, it varies based upon what my wife tells me. So last night we went out for a nice Thai restaurant at Thai Bloom. So tend to enjoy that in Beaverton, and little Italian at Giovanni's from time to time. So try to keep it local and with our independent businesses. Those are the two that immediately come to mind that we've enjoyed in the last month or so.
All righty. Last up, what is your favorite Oregon beer?
Cream. My buddy Rudy Kellner started that. It's a beautiful kind of Pilsner Czech. If you know Pilsner Urquell from the Czech Republic, he's done a really good job to mimic that. And in Oregon, you can get some really great pills.
Oh, awesome. All righty. Last up, do you have any final thoughts for yours?
Absolutely. You can, at first as a politician, anytime you have an opportunity to speak, it's an opportunity to try to talk to people about our values, our opportunities, and why are we running? What are we trying to do? Hopefully over the last 15, 20 minutes or so, 30, you've seen that I'm focusing on is the crime challenge, the homelessness, and the economy. Those are just the beginnings of what we need to do in a state to help us, become and maintain the Oregon we want it to be. There's other challenges like our energy mandates, and I want to be able to use my experience of being an inventor. I hold several patents in energy conservation and in reduction of chemical footprints. I want to be able to bring that knowledge and activity into Salem so that when it's time for a business to potentially come to Oregon, we're no longer laughed at. We're not, no, why Oregon? Really? If we didn't have the previous investment prior to the last 10 or 20 years of the instability in Portland, I really doubt Intel would be here. And that's a problem. And what I'm trying to do is become that lawmaker in Salem that can be that liaison to business. I speak their language. At the same time, I know how to keep them accountable to not play the tax games. Intel, took, loans and grants from the state of Oregon and then just did a collection of layoffs. Well, there needs to be a clawback when a company says, hey, we're going to create jobs, and then for their own economic reasons, decide to do the opposite. Well, I've been on that side of the table. I understand what needs to be in the laws, in the regulations of how we interact with these companies to hold them accountable for their environmental standards, not just with nominal slaps on the wrist for chemical releases, but real penalties with teeth. Because if they know there's a real penalty, I can tell you as a guy that's run those types of businesses, I'm going to make sure that we invest not to have the penalty and not just do the minimums. So being that person that has the business side, the semiconductor side, and personally focused on ensuring that we leave this planet in a better state, that being that steward of our infrastructure is very, very important to me. And one of the reasons I decided to say, you know what, I'm 61 years old. I've lived a full life. I could sit back and, enjoy quote unquote retirement or, doing, whatever I can and with my own finances. But I was compelled to serve again. I've served the country as an officer in the Army, doing nation building and nation rebuilding around the world. And then in my business career, one of the things we also didn't cover a lot was at Ericsson, being able to, support our counterterrorism efforts and humanitarian efforts around the world. And somehow I thought this, by having an opportunity to run for this position, I'd be able to leverage all those experiences and especially being able to look at it with, I'm going to say more of a bipartisan view of being able to understand that there are going to be some compromises we need to make, being able to bring some balance back into Salem, to understand that our actions had consequences, have the courage to maybe pull back some of those actions we've taken while introducing some others that will help us continue to grow, continuing to be creative. And we may take some risks from time to time. We are Oregon. We want to be weird. We want to be forward looking, but not at the expense of the core safety, core security of our people. And so, as a person that's lived in the public sector, the private sector, inventor, educator, even, I said, I spent time there. We haven't even in this interview talked about education because that's our opportunity to be able to invest in our people, invest in our youth, invest in being able to get the skills and trades we need to be able to move up the economic ladder and be able to create that generational wealth that at least I know I can say myself, I live the American dream. My dad worked in Kmart, Walmart when he had a job and he spent a lot of time in unemployment. I was the free lunch kid. I had the little card, had to kind of put my head down, not want anybody to see that I was getting lunch for free. But America allowed me to now go to university, do this career I've been able to have, and now it's some way I look at it as my civic responsibility to try to pay back and use this experience to go to the Senate and help. I have no real intention at this point, and I don't want to be quoted in 4 years. I don't have intention of running again. I have a strong belief against career politicians. I'm doing this for 4 years to help. I'll be 65, 66 years old. I'd like to enjoy retirement myself someday, but I feel that there's something I could do to help, and I'm motivated to do that. And it's a privilege to talk to you today, to be able to get this type of message out, because there's so few forums where we can really talk to the voters and get our opinions, or the voter, more importantly, to the voter to form their opinions about us. So really, really appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you for joining us.